Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Sutta class. We will start with the Namo Tassa as usual. Feel free to join if you like. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Sutta class. Today we continue our topic of the 5 hindrances, or strategies how to overcome the 5 hindrances actually, that we have started a few weeks ago. And we have already talked about sensual desire, how to overcome that with meditation methods that have to do with perceiving the repulsiveness in things or the unattractive aspect in things. We have also talked about ill will that is overcome through metta practice and through the other Brahma Viharas. And we have also talked last time about laziness and sleepiness, or sloth and torpor, and how that is overcome with a whole list of methods that the Buddha gave to Mahānāma in the sutta that we read last time. And today we want to talk about the hindrance of doubt. And so doubt means doubt in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, so the 3 jewels. Doubt if the Buddha was really enlightened, or doubt if the Dhamma really works, if the practice really works, if there is a path, and so on, or doubt even in our own abilities. Maybe people think other people can practice, but I can't practice. Somehow it doesn't work for me, or somehow I don't have the merit, or whatever. So just doubt that blocks our progress on the path. And so that is the hindrance we want to talk about today. And for those of you who were there a few weeks ago when we read this sutta that was talking about all the 5 hindrances, there the Buddha suggested that doubt is overcome by contemplating things that are, like, by trying to understand what things are wholesome, which things are unwholesome, what is beneficial, what is unbeneficial, what is skillful, what is unskillful. So just trying to understand which kind of things actually make our life better, which kind of things kind of help us to overcome suffering, and then kind of evaluating if the Dhamma practice actually does help us in our daily life, and really trying to understand all those Dhamma principles, and then understanding how all this leads to a good outcome. So understanding cause and effect. If we do skillful things, then beneficial outcomes will happen. And if we do unskillful things, then suffering will follow. And so just, better understanding Dhamma practice and how to actually put that into practice is the right way to overcome doubt. Because when we have doubt, obviously that blocks our path, that hinders our progress, the hindrance of doubt, obviously. So, and that happens because we haven't properly understood yet how the path works, and we haven't really properly understood how our practice is of benefit to us. And so today we are going to read the Mahānāma Sutta. The Mahānāma Sutta is from the Anguttara Nikaya, number 6.10. I have put a link in the live chat to Bhante Sujata's translation, and I will also be reading from the same translation, so we can go through it together. So let's just get started right away with this sutta. In English it is called with Mahānāma. At one time, the Buddha was staying in the land of the Sakyans near Kapilavatthu in the banyan tree monastery. Then Mahānāma the Sakyan went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, "Sir, when a noble disciple has reached the fruit and understood the instructions, what kind of meditation do they frequently practice?" So this sutta takes place in the Buddha's homeland in the Sakyan country. So the Buddha obviously also was a Sakyan. That's why he is called Sakyamuni. And here Mahānāma talks to him. Mahānāma is a cousin of the Buddha. And Mahānāma also is, I think, the older brother of Anuruddha, the famous monk who was foremost with the divine eye. And Mahānāma himself also at some point reached the noble attainments. Definitely in some suttas he is mentioned as a stream enterer. In this particular sutta here, he might not be a stream enterer yet, but clearly he's very interested in the practice. So he goes to the Buddha and he asks this question. So when a noble disciple has reached the fruit and understood the instructions, what kind of meditation do they practice? So what he's asking about, he asks what kind of meditation do stream enterers practice, or people who have at least attained stream entry and higher attainments. So this reference here, reaching the fruit and understanding the instructions, this is a reference to stream entry. Reaching the fruit obviously means the fruit of a noble attainment. So that could actually mean anything between stream entry and arahantship. But since he also asked somebody who has understood the instructions, that clearly means that this must be a stream enterer or somebody higher. Because at stream entry, the whole point of stream entry is that we deeply, fundamentally understand the Dhamma. This is like the stock passage in the suttas when stream entry is described, means that people understand the Dhamma, they fathom the Dhamma, their Dhamma eye opens, they really, really deeply see, and they become independent of a teacher. So that means they no longer need a teacher in the Buddha's teaching. They have really, really very deeply understood the Dhamma, all the principles. They have understood how the path works, which is why they no longer need a teacher. So they are really fixed in the Dhamma. And even if they die and get reborn somewhere else, they will not lose the proper path anymore. So they are guaranteed to reach Nibbana because they have so deeply understood all these principles of practice. So they have no more doubt in their mind. This is the whole point of stream entry, that we can break through 3 fetters. The first fetter we break through at stream entry is, of course, attachments to rites and rituals. Since we understand how practice works, we understand that there's no point being attached to any kind of specific ritual. It's not the ritual that's going to purify you. It's actually the proper Dhamma practice and the development of wisdom and insight, because it is wisdom that helps us let go of our defilements and purify the mind and get liberated. And then the second fetter that we break through is personality view. So this belief that there is a self, an enduring, permanent, stable self, or a soul, if you want to call it that. So this belief is also completely abandoned because we have properly understood cause and effect. Since we have understood the Dhamma, we've also understood cause and effect, how things arise dependently, dependent origination, and so that there is nothing that is permanent and stable and everlasting. So clearly there cannot be a self. And then the third fetter that we break through is doubt, or that we abandon is doubt. Because obviously once you have really deeply seen the Dhamma and you've really deeply understood how the practice works, you cannot have any more doubt because you understand how it all works. So you clearly see that it does work, and you don't have to doubt it anymore if it works, or if the Buddha was fully enlightened, because you clearly see how the path to enlightenment works. So a stream enterer has abandoned doubt, and for that reason, it is very interesting to see how such people practice meditation. Obviously, since the hindrance we're talking about today is doubt, we want to practice in a way that overcomes doubt. It is very interesting to practice these kind of meditations. So these kind of meditations that are following now, obviously they can only develop to perfection once you are a noble person, once you have made the breakthrough to stream entry. But for people who want to attain stream entry, this is a really good preparation. So we can already practice as though we were a stream enterer, and so abandon the defilements that block us from entering the stream. And as we keep on practicing in this way, these hindrances and these fetters are gradually abandoned, especially doubt, and so that eventually they can lead us to stream entry. So This is what this sutta is about. And so now what follows are 6 of these kind of meditations. They're called the 6 recollections. They very frequently occur together in suttas. So the 6 recollections, or the 6 anusatis in Pali. And then let's continue now with the first of these 6 recollections. So the Buddha says, Mahānāma, when a noble disciple has reached the fruit and understood the instructions, they frequently practice this kind of meditation. Firstly, a noble disciple recollects the realized one, so the Buddha. That blessed one is perfected, a fully awakened Buddha, accomplished in knowledge and conduct, holy, knower of the world, supreme guide for those who wish to train, teacher of gods and humans, awakened, blessed. So this is the first meditation technique that the Buddha suggests here, which is the recollection of the Buddha. And so for people who are from traditional Buddhist countries, or people who spend a lot of time in monasteries, you will recognize this list. This is the so-called Itipiso. This is chanted in monasteries every single day. And in many Asian countries, people also chant this every single day at home. And also a lot of Westerners incorporate this into their practice. If they do chanting, usually this is one of the chants that they might do, the Itipiso, which is the recollection of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And these are lists of qualities, in this case here of the Buddha. They are designed to remind us of the Buddha and his accomplishments. So they're designed to inspire us, and they can be used for meditation also. So this is not just a chanting, but this is actually used for meditation and contemplation. So if you wanted to do this kind of meditation, what you would do is you would sit down, you would take the first quality of the Buddha that is mentioned here. So he is perfected. In Pali, this means arahant. Arahant also obviously is connected to the word arahant. So he is fully enlightened. He is fully liberated from all defilements. So you would reflect what that means. So you would think, oh, he has abandoned all defilements. His mind is entirely clear, entirely pure. He has abandoned all suffering. He has walked the path to the end. So he is an amazing teacher because he has accomplished the path and so on. And so you would think, or like what that means for you in the practice, that your teacher is an arahant, basically, or what arahantship means. And then you can move on to the second quality, which is Samma Sambuddha, so a fully awakened Buddha, and you would reflect how lucky you are, how beneficial this is that the Buddha is fully awakened, that he is a Samma Sambuddha. If he wasn't, he might have chosen not to teach. So there are other kinds of Buddhas, such as Pacceka Buddhas, for example. They don't teach. They just remain silent, and eventually they pass away. And so the Dhamma just dies with them. But since Gautama Buddha was a Samma Sambuddha, he chose to teach the world, and the amazing benefits this has had for like millions and millions of beings. And so many other people have followed in his were able to follow in his footsteps because he chose to teach, and so on. So you can go through this entire list of qualities. The next one is accomplished in knowledge and conduct. So it means the Buddha has acquired really vast knowledge and wisdom, but also his conduct is perfect. So he's not just preaching one thing and doing another thing. What he preaches, he actually does, and he does what he preaches. So there is no hypocrisy there. There is no conduct there that is uninspiring or that might create obstacles for us. Because if we see a teacher behaving in a way that is maybe not so nice, or maybe a bit like, let's say, rude, or let's say, doing things that people shouldn't be doing, then of course we might lose faith and we might have a lot of doubt in that teacher. But the Buddha is accomplished and he's perfected in that regard. So there's nothing that would sort of create obstacles for us. And so on, you can go through this list. This is one traditional way how this recollection of the Buddha is being done. So, and this is really something that can be very personal. So all these qualities can mean different things for different people. So really you can personally think like, what does this mean for me? How does this inspire me? And you can take as much time as you want. For example, you can take 5 minutes for each and every quality, or you can spend an entire meditation session just focusing on one quality. It's really up to you. So this is one method how to do this recollection of the Buddha. Traditionally, this is more done in Asia. In Western countries, people don't do it as much. Because in Asia, many people already grow up in a Buddhist culture. So from when they're small children, they develop a lot of faith in the Buddha. So they have a lot of joy connected with this kind of practice. And it's very easy for them to uplift the mind with this kind of thing. In Western countries, we don't grow up this way. So for us, it's a little bit more difficult. Some people find it easier to do recollection of the Buddha with other methods. One method, for example, is just to recite the Buddha's name. This is also quite popular in Thailand. So that while breathing in, you recite Bud, and while breathing out, you recite Do. So you just recite Buddo, Buddo, or Buddha, Buddha, whatever is easier to you while breathing. And that should also help you to like calm down the mind and make the mind happy. Other people just visualize the Buddha in front of them. Maybe they just see an image of the Buddha, or maybe they just imagine that the Buddha is sitting right in front of them, and they get like bathed in the Buddha's good qualities, his metta. They really like imagine that they can physically feel the metta and the goodwill that the Buddha has towards them, and how easy it would be to practice in that kind of atmosphere, in that kind of like good energy. And so there are many ways how you can practice this recollection of the Buddha. So you can experiment a little bit, see how it works, what kind of technique works for you. And then the Buddha continues, and he says, when a noble disciple recollects the realized one, their mind is not full of greed, hate, and delusion. At that time, their mind is unswerving, based on the realized one. A noble disciple whose mind is unswerving finds inspiration in the meaning and the teaching, and finds joy connected with the teaching. When their joyful rapture springs up, when the mind is full of rapture, the body becomes tranquil. When the body is tranquil, they feel bliss. And when they are blissful, the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. This is called a noble disciple who lives in balance among people who are unbalanced, and lives untroubled among people who are troubled. They've entered the stream of the teaching and developed the recollection of the Buddha. So now the Buddha says, when you focus on this wholesome object, so the Buddha as the meditation object, obviously your mind is not full of greed, hate, and delusion. So you have a mind that is full of wholesome qualities, joy and inspiration, and of course the Buddha. So those wholesome qualities cannot coexist together with unwholesome qualities. So all the unwholesome qualities are like temporarily pushed out. So the mind is kind of purified of greed, hatred, and delusion. And also the mind attains some kind of concentration at this point. The Buddha says the mind is unswerving based on the realized one. So it kind of gets concentrated using this object, the Buddha. And then the Buddha says that somebody whose mind is like concentrated finds inspiration in the meaning, finds inspiration in the teaching, and finds joy connected with the teaching. So this meditation method is designed to uplift us, to inspire us, to create joy in the mind. And it's very interesting because this exact phrasing is also used in other suttas, especially also, for example, in the Kusambhya Sutta. This is Majjhima Nikaya number 48, where the Buddha gives a list of 7 qualities of somebody who is a stream enterer. And one of the qualities is that they get inspired when they hear the Dhamma teachings. So when they hear Dhamma teachings, they find inspiration in the meaning, they find inspiration in the teaching, and they find joy connected with the teaching. So this is a natural state of a stream enterer or someone higher up. Whenever they hear pure Dhamma, then they just get so joyful, so elated, so inspired. And of course, we can train our mind to have a similar experience And the closer we get to being to having that experience, the closer we actually can get to actual stream entry. And so all this is done to make the mind joyful. And then the Buddha says when they're joyful, then rapture springs up. And then from rapture, the body becomes tranquil. And from there, they feel bliss. And from there, they become immersed in samadhi. So this is a very interesting sequence here. This like one joy after the other and how they enter samadhi this way. This sequence is often also called dependent liberation. So as a complement to, or being complementary to dependent origination, which explains how all the suffering is created in the world. This is called dependent liberation, which explains how we get rid of all our defilements in the mind and become fully liberated. And also this sequence here, like this sequence, if it is really dependent liberation, it continues a little bit after samadhi still. There is like you develop wisdom also based on that samadhi, and then obviously you abandon your defilements and become fully liberated. So there's a bit missing here in this kind of list here. But what is described here is the process of going through the 4 jhanas. So this is a reference to the 4 jhanas without actually mentioning the jhanas. And we can see that this is a reference to the progression through the 4 jhanas because those jhana factors are all mentioned here. So at first, we practice this Buddhanusati, recollection of the Buddha, and that makes us inspired and joyful in the mind. And in Pali, this joy that we have here is called pamoja. So this is a preliminary to a jhana practice. Pamoja is not really one of the jhana factors, but this pamoja, this preliminary joy, then becomes stronger and stronger the more we practice, the more we get inspired, and eventually this develops into what is here translated as rapture. So rapture in Pali is called piti, and those of you who know the jhana factors will recognize that piti obviously is a jhana factor of the first and the second jhana. And then as you progress through the jhanas, the mind is full of rapture in the first and second jhana, and then eventually the body becomes tranquil. And when the body is tranquil, they feel bliss. And so the word for bliss here, this is in Pali the word sukha. Again, sukha is a jhana factor. And sukha is a factor that is present from the first through the third jhana. So at the beginning, the rapture is the dominant experience, but rapture is a little bit coarse. Rapture is actually the mental positive feeling, a mental, nice, pleasant feeling. But because this is the coarser factor, this will eventually fall away as the mind prepares to enter the third jhana, and a more subtle kind of bliss takes over. In Pali, this is called sukha, here translated as bliss. This is a bodily pleasant feeling. So once we enter into third jhana, the mind is already very equanimous, so the mental pleasant feeling has fallen away, but the bodily pleasant feeling is still there. The body is very tranquil at this point, and you feel this sukha, the bodily pleasant feeling. And then eventually the sukha also falls away, and we enter into fourth jhana. At this point, the mind is entirely equanimous and the body is entirely filled with neutral feeling. And at that point, samadhi becomes perfected. This is the absolutely unshakable samadhi of the fourth jhana. So at this point, the samadhi is really, really fully stable and at its peak, which is why here the text says you become immersed in samadhi. So obviously, before you already have samadhi, the first 3 jhanas are also very, very strong samadhi, but at the fourth jhana, the samadhi is really perfected. So this refers to a progression through the jhanas here. And then the Buddha says, when you do this, you're called a noble disciple who lives in balance among people who are unbalanced, and lives untroubled among people who are troubled. So obviously, if you can attain fourth jhana, as I mentioned, your equanimity is perfect. So obviously you live in balance. and you live untroubled because you're so equanimous that the external conditions of the world don't really trouble you anymore. And the Buddha says they've entered the stream of the teaching and developed the recollection of the Buddha. So you can see this practice of the recollection of the Buddha. This isn't just a preliminary practice for beginners. This isn't just some kind of childish practice for people who can't do real meditation. This is really a very, very powerful method of meditation, and it can take you all the way to the fourth jhana. And obviously from the fourth jhana, then it can take you to the noble attainments and all the way up to arahantship. So this is a very, very powerful method, not a beginner's teaching. So for those of you who struggle a lot with doubt, this might be a very, very powerful method. And even for other people, this can be very inspiring to practice in this way. And then the Buddha talks about the next method. And he says, furthermore, a noble disciple recollects the teaching. The teaching is well explained by the Buddha, visible in this very life, immediately effective, inviting inspection, relevant, so that sensible people can know it for themselves. When a noble disciple recollects the teaching, their mind is not full of greed, hate, and delusion. And so on. Then it goes through the entire list again, how they get very inspired in the teaching and how they go through this process of dependent liberation through the four jhanas, and they enter into very deep samadhi. And then again, are noble disciples who and have entered the stream and who live balanced among unbalanced people and who develop this recollection of the Dhamma. So this is the second method. We are practicing not with the Buddha this time, but we are practicing with the Dhamma. And again, we have a whole list of qualities of the Dhamma that we can practice with in a very similar way to how we practice with the qualities of the Buddha. We can take those qualities one by one and reflect on what this means for us. How, for example, the first one is visible in this very life. How we can see benefits of our practice already in this very life. We don't have to wait until after death to see if this has worked. We should be able to really to make progress in this very life. We should be able to develop our mind, to make the mind clearer and purer, to abandon a few defilements, and to see benefits that in the sense that our life becomes easier. There's somewhat less suffering in our mind. We are a little bit less attached. We experience a little bit less anger, a little bit less greed. We can live a bit more balanced. And we can just make better decisions, because once we know Dhamma principles, we kind of know what is important in our life and how we plan for the long term, instead of just being constantly under the sway of our defilements and just rushing around trying to sort of do what the defilements tell us to do. So this, for example, is the first quality that we think about. Then, and so we go on through the other qualities: immediately effective, inviting inspection, relevant, and so on. So again, we can take these qualities one by one, either each for a few minutes or even each for an entire meditation session, and reflect on what this means for us. For some people, it's also quite effective to recollect other teachings of the Dhamma. For example, if people have memorized suttas, they can reflect on different suttas in their meditation. They can reflect on the Noble Eightfold Path and then take every individual path factor and reflect on that. They can take the Four Noble Truths. They can take dependent origination. They can take the 5 hindrances and the 7 enlightenment factors. Like whatever Dhamma category is helpful for you to contemplate and to inspire you to understand the Dhamma better, to develop your wisdom, to bring up some inspiration and some joy in your practice, that you can use as like under this umbrella term, recollection of the teaching. And again, the purpose is to develop the wisdom and to bring up joy in the mind. And then once you have that joy in the mind and that inspiration, you can go through this sequence of dependent liberation that takes you all the way into the 4th jhana and beyond that. So then we have the third method, and this is the recollection of the Sangha. And the Buddha says, furthermore, a noble disciple recollects the Sangha. The Sangha of the Buddha's disciples is practicing the way that's good, direct, methodical, and proper. It consists of the 4 pairs, the 8 individuals. This is the Sangha of the Buddha's disciples that is worthy of offerings dedicated to the gods, worthy of hospitality, worthy of a religious donation, worthy of greeting with joint palms, and is the supreme field of merit for the world. And then again, there follows the stock passage of how this leads to joy and inspiration and goes through the jhanas and eventually helps us to be fully liberated, basically. So, and again, we have a list of qualities that we can practice with in the same way we have just seen now. So we first reflect on the way, how it is practiced, and how it is good, direct, methodical, and proper. And then how they are 4 pairs, the 8 individuals in the Sangha. So the 4 pairs means, like the 8 individuals means the 8 kinds of noble beings. So that means an arahant and somebody on the path to arahantship, a non-returner and somebody on the path to non-return, a once returner and somebody on the path to once return, and a stream enterer and somebody on the path to stream entry. So those are the 8 individuals, and they are 4 pairs because there's always somebody on the path and then somebody who has already attained the fruit. So that's what is meant with that. And then we reflect how they are worthy of offerings that are dedicated to the gods, worthy of hospitality, worthy of religious donation, and worthy of paying respect with joint palms. That means in Anjali. How they are a supreme field of merit for the world, because these are people that have joined the Sangha, the monastic Sangha, usually, and how they have dedicated their entire life to the practice of the Buddha's teaching. Like they have made a really, really deep commitment to practicing the Dhamma. They are not distracted by anything else. They don't have like 100 other different things to do at the same time that would take away from their Dhamma practice. So they don't have families, they don't have jobs, they don't have hobbies, other than practicing the Dhamma, of course, in various ways. So they're really very single-pointed, very focused on just giving their entire life to the practice. And that is why they are considered the supreme field of merit for the world, because Dhamma practice is the highest thing that you can do with your life, and there's a whole group of people that are all doing this together. So this is how we do recollection of the Sangha. And again, you can personalize this a little bit. For example, you can also think about monks and nuns that inspire you, like especially don't make it too personal, like don't just think about one specific monastic and get inspired about that person. It should really be about the whole group, because if you think about one specific person, first of all, it can foster attachments that you might not want to build up. The other thing also is maybe that one thing, that one person that you're attached to, maybe that person isn't all that perfect. So at some point they will do something that you don't like either because you misinterpret what they did, or maybe they really did something that wasn't quite wholesome. And then all your faith is shattered, all your confidence in the Sangha is shattered, and you start to really doubt the entire group. So it's best not to focus exclusively on one person, but you can personalize this a little bit and think about like good experiences that you had with Sangha members who might have helped you, for example, in your practice, or who gave very inspiring talks, or who explained something to you, or who are just a really good example of like various aspects on the path. So that is also possible in this kind of practice. And then we have the fourth method, which is sila, recollection of sila, so ethical conduct. And the Buddha says, furthermore, a noble disciple recollects their own ethical conduct. which is unbroken, impeccable, spotless, and unmarred, liberating, praised by sensible people, not mistaken, and leading to immersion. And again, that should inspire you, lead you through samadhi, and to the higher attainments on the path. So here we recollect our own sila. So we contemplate that as Buddhists, we try to be ethical people. Maybe many of you have taken 5 precepts. Some of you might have taken higher precepts. And you reflect how these precepts are really so beneficial for your life. You're not creating unwholesome karma. You're not creating suffering for you, since you don't harm other beings. You're planting positive seeds that will sprout into positive plants, and all these positive things will eventually come back to you. You're not causing future harm to yourself, since you're not harming others now. And so you reflect how this is so beneficial, and how you're keeping it to the best of your ability. Hopefully, maybe you can keep it unbroken. If not, you can train towards keeping it a little bit better. And you can sort of also see how this actually is a very good foundation for samadhi. So here the text says it is leading to immersion. Immersion obviously is a translation for samadhi. So having this really pure mind, this joyful mind, this mind that isn't full of defilements, and that isn't constantly stirred up by remorse because you've done something wrong and you regret what you did afterwards, or you haven't done anything that has harmed other people. That really brings a certain calm to the mind, a certain peace to the mind. And that obviously can then lead that can be a basis for the development of samadhi. So that obviously isn't samadhi yet, but it's really an important basis. If you didn't have ethical conduct, it would be really difficult, or probably near impossible, to develop samadhi at all. And even if you could develop samadhi, it would not be stable. You could develop it sometimes, but most of the time it would fall away again. So sila is really important for stabilizing samadhi, and we can again reflect how doing this is so positive for our own life. And obviously this also then helps us to develop other qualities on the path, such as wisdom. Once we see cause and effect here, like we're doing positive things, and this makes us just internally happy and makes our mind so bright, then we can see cause and effect. We're doing positive things, our mind gets purer and brighter. So we immediately experience the law of cause and effect here, basically. So we immediately can see some Dharma principles here. And then the next reflection to do is generosity. So dana, or in this case, chaga. Chaganusati, chaga is basically a synonym for dana. And the Buddha says, furthermore, a noble disciple recollects their own generosity. I'm so fortunate, so very fortunate. Among people full of the stain of stinginess, I live at home, rid of stinginess, freely generous, open-handed, loving to let go, committed to charity, loving to give and to share. And again, the same sequence of joy and samadhi and the higher attainments. So this is the reflection that we are generous. This obviously is especially good to do if we are planning to give dana, or if we have given dana, but it can really be done at any time. If you've ever been generous with anybody, shared anything with anyone, doesn't necessarily have to be the Sangha, but could be the Sangha, since Sangha is, as we have just seen, the supreme field of merit. So giving to the Sangha is especially beneficial, but of course we can give to anyone. There is a sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, which is called the Dakkhina Vibhanga Sutta. And in that, the Buddha sort of teaches how you can give to various different groups of people, and how that positive result will eventually come back to you. So in so many times, like if you give to a Sangha of bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, what will come back from that is basically immeasurable. But even if you give to individual people, there's still a huge benefit from that. And the Buddha says, even if you give to an immoral person, the benefit that comes back from that is 1,000-fold. And even if you give to an animal, what will come back is 100-fold. So no matter who you give to, this is always really, really beneficial. And so you can recollect how fortunate you are that you have this opportunity and that you have this positive character trait that you give and share with other people. So don't take this for granted. There are many people who really struggle with generosity. So if you can do that, that's a really amazing accomplishment in your character. Maybe something that you have trained to build up over many lifetimes. And if you really train yourself to be generous, this just brings so much joy in the mind to see how you can share things with other people, make them happy, give them something that they might need, give them something that might support them in their life or in their Dhamma practice. And you just get so much joy out of being able to help others that this can really also uplift the mind and give you so much inspiration. And if you feel that you're a little bit deficient in this quality, then this can be a really good can push you a little bit to develop this quality a little bit more. So, and then we have the last quality. The last quality is the Devanusati, or recollection of the deities. And the Buddha says, furthermore, a noble disciple recollects the deities. They are the gods of the 4 great kings, the gods of the 33, the gods of Yama, the joyful gods, the gods who love to create, the gods who control the creations of others, the gods of Brahma's host, and gods even higher than these. When those deities passed away from here, they were reborn there because of their faith, ethics, learning, generosity, and wisdom. I too have the same kind of faith, ethics, learning, generosity, and wisdom. And then again, there is the whole sequence of inspiration, samadhi, and the higher attainments. So this is the recollection of the deities. We have a whole list of deities here. For those of you who are not that familiar with Buddhist cosmology, the first few on this list, from the gods of the 4 great kings to the gods who control the creations of others, these are all deities in successively higher realms or higher heavens that all still belong to the sensual plane. So the sensual plane, or Kamaloka in Pali, is the plane that we humans also live on, and that animals and ghost beings and hell beings and so live on. So these are all still gods that sort of live in the same plane as we do, and that are still subject to sensual desires and sensual experiences in very similar ways to how we are subject to those experiences. Only thing is that their experiences are obviously much more refined, and their experience is a lot more joyful and pleasant than ours. And then from the gods of Brahma's host upwards, these are beings in the jhana realms, so the fine material realms, or the Rupa Loka in Pali. So all the Brahma gods are in the jhana realms, and then there are gods even higher than these in the immaterial realms. So these correspond to the immaterial attainments that we can attain in our meditation practice after we have practiced all the 4 jhanas. And so the Buddha says that we reflect how those deities all created really good karma in order to be reborn in those heaven realms. And the way that they created this good karma is because they have 5 qualities: faith, ethics, learning, generosity, and wisdom. So not all deities necessarily have all 5 of these qualities, but they will have some of these qualities at least. So not all deities obviously were Buddhist in the past. There are many good people who are not necessarily Buddhist, but for example, they will probably have had ethics. So something like the 5 precepts or something comparable. Like there are many people who are not Buddhist, but still they don't kill, and they try not to harm other beings and so on. So they also have ethics if they're not Buddhist. And so such people can also be reborn as gods, but certainly they have had a lot of they have planted a lot of very positive seeds in order to get this good result. Then another thing that is here is faith. So this faith or Confidence can be confidence in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, cultivated through recollection, similar to those that we have explained just now. Learning, of course, means learning in what is skillful. So it doesn't mean random learning of whatever worldly thing, but understanding what is skillful, especially can be learning in the Dhamma, learning about cause and effect, learning about how to create good karma, learning suttas, practicing the Buddha's teaching, and so on. Then generosity, again, is a quality that many people can have. You don't need to be Buddhist to be generous, but this is really also something that uplifts the mind and sort of prepares the mind to be a deva, because if you have a mind that is like a deva already on earth while you live as a human, obviously this is very likely to lead to a rebirth in a deva realm. And then wisdom, again, is very similar. Wisdom, again, refers to understanding what is skillful and what is unskillful. And then the reflection isn't just that those deities have all these positive qualities, which is why they have been reborn as deities, but that I too have the same kind of faith, ethics, learning, generosity, and wisdom. So that means basically I will, if I don't attain Nibbana and don't get reborn at all, then I will be reborn as a deity, and I will also experience all these good results in the heaven realms, since I have cultivated these same qualities. So again, we take like a positive joy in our abilities, in our Dhamma practice. And this is again intended to uplift us, make the mind joyful, so that we can go through this progression of jhanas and samadhi states. So, and then the Buddha says, when a noble disciple has reached the fruit and understood the instructions, this is the kind of meditation they frequently practice. So these are the 6 recollections, the 6 anusatis. They are really beneficial for all kinds of people, especially beneficial for overcoming the hindrance of doubt, because they are designed to directly counteract doubt in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and our own abilities to practice. So they can be really, really helpful. But even if people don't experience that much doubt, still this is a good practice, because as we have seen, it can lead us very far on the path, can lead us through all the jhanas and even the higher attainments. So at this point, we will end the Dhamma talk, and I will see if there are any questions in the live chat. So let's see. I see a lot of Anjalis. Nice to see so many people checking in from all over the world. That's really nice to see. Wonderful. There's a question here by somebody called AS. Do the 5 hindrances arise interwoven or separately or both? Thank you for this teaching. So the 5 hindrances, well, it can be both. Often they are very much interwoven, and often the mind can switch between one hindrance and the other. So one thing that's very common is a switch between restlessness and sleepiness, for example, because when we are very restless, the mind uses up a lot of energy. Eventually it will be just exhausted and then become sleepy. Then we sleep a while, the mind recovers and it's restless again. So that is very typical. And also other hindrances such as sensual desire and ill will often go along with either restlessness or with sleepiness. For example, if you have a lot of anger in your mind, that often comes with a lot of restlessness. Unless that anger has been going for a while, then it can turn into depression, and depression can come along with a lot of tiredness and exhaustion. And the same with sensual desire. If you have a lot of sensual desire, the mind can be very restless until you eventually get so exhausted from running after all these sense pleasures the whole time that you just feel lazy and sleepy the whole time. So it's very common that hindrances arise together. Doubt is a little bit different. Doubt is very specific to the Dhamma practice. So doubt can also arise alone or by itself if we haven't properly understood how the path works. So doubt is something that can sort of arise in anybody who is not a stream enterer yet, especially if they have witnessed like if they feel their own practice doesn't make any progress, or if they feel that they can't properly understand the teachings, Dharma talks or suttas and so on, or if they have witnessed, let's say, another Dharma practitioner do something really unwholesome, so they feel like, how can a Dharma practitioner do this? And it kind of destroys their faith. So especially if something bad happens to them in a Dharma center or in a monastery, that can cause a lot of issues. So yeah, doubt is something that can arise on its own. The others are often very much interwoven, but can also arise separately. It really depends from person to person. So Buddha Ruchi says, so when we wish all beings to be happy, we wish them to be sukhi. And so we are wishing them into the jhanas, so it seems. I guess this refers to sukha, that jhana factor. So as I mentioned, in the context of the jhana, sukha means a bodily pleasant feeling, but that's kind of a specific context in the jhanas where we have this sequence of piti and sukha, and then deep immersion of the fourth jhana, so equanimity. In this particular sutta, I have said this refers to the jhanas because it really follows this jhana sequence in a pretty obvious fashion. So the same way that we progress through the four jhanas with all these jhana factors is like the same sequence that this dependent liberation explains things, just without using the word jhana. The word sukha also can be used in other contexts. Sukha is just the opposite of dukkha. Dukkha obviously means suffering. So in other contexts, if there isn't really any reference to jhanas, it can just mean happiness, like general happiness. But of course, it's always good to wish other beings to be happy. And of course, the highest happiness that we can attain outside of nibbana, of being fully liberated, is those pleasant states of the higher concentration attainments. So those pleasant states of the jhanas or the immaterial attainments. So of course, it's always good to wish them to be in jhanas, but it doesn't have to be that specific. It doesn't need to be a jhana. You can just in generally wish them to be happy. Okay, I don't really see any other question at the moment. So I guess that was it for today. That's really good. So I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope you got inspired a little bit, and I hope now you know how to do these kind of practices. So if you want to try that out, that is really, really helpful, especially on days when you might feel a little down. If you don't have that much joy, don't have that much inspiration, you can try that out. So for example, just imagining the Buddha sitting in front of you and showering you with all the metta and kindness and so on. That can feel really inspiring as a form of Buddhanusati, or thinking about your own good qualities in Devanusati, or in recollection of generosity and so on, or a recollection of your own sila. That can feel really inspiring, and then that can also help you to then have more interest in the practice in general. Like if you see you get so much joy out of keeping sila and out of being generous, then that you will have more interest in being even more generous, because you get so much joy in your meditation practice out of that. So it's kind of like a self-perpetuating positive circle, or like a spiral that's going up and up until you reach liberation. So you can try that out if you want, if you experience a lot of doubt, or if you experience a little bit lack of joy and inspiration. And then we can finish the session for today. We will finish as usual with 3 sadhus. Feel free to join if you like. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So I wish you a good rest of the day and a good week, and I will hopefully see you all next Tuesday.